Brad Restituto.
Comes up the pocket, fire to the right side, caught by Diggs. Stay up! Oh my God! Oh my God! Touchdown! Are you kidding me? It's the Minneapolis Miracle!
I got 3 words for you. You like that?
Welcome to the Rest Stop. It's Tuesday, December 22nd, 2020. I'm your host, Brad Restituto, and we come to you live every Tuesday and Thursday night, 9 o'clock Pacific time. You can download the Twitch app, www.twitch.tv/Chris Landry Football. If you don't want to download the app, you can watch us live. And then, of course, on my Facebook page, on Twitter, @BradTheBeliever. You can check us out. Got a good show for you today. Going to recap our Thursday picks NFL as we're coming up toward the end of the season, week 15 complete. We're going to actually have a Christmas Day game this season in the NFL, followed by Saturday and Sunday games. So we'll get into those after briefly, and we'll recap our week 15 picks. Not a great week for us as it has been the past month. Some really tough games, and as you noticed, some of the biggest dogs of the season came in. So we'll go over some of those. And then great start to the season tonight in the NBA. We got basketball kicked back off. The defending champion Lakers currently in action against the Clippers. And then the new look Brooklyn Nets with a healthy Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving was the first game tonight on the TNT doubleheader. They faced the Golden State Warriors and looked pretty good. So we'll go over some of that. College football playoff is ready to roll. Not too much excitement in the shortened season. It kind of went as expected. And then the mainstays, Alabama and Clemson. So we'll briefly get into that as well. Joining me as always, Spencer Ostrowski, also known as Spencer the Wiz. You can follow him on Twitter @Spencer the Wiz and his YouTube channel, Blue Milk Boys Gaming. And then he does his radio show live every Friday here in Las Vegas on 1400 KSHB called Delivering Sports. So I hope everyone's having a good end of 2020, or trying to at least, as we're coming up on Christmas time if you celebrate that. And we'll probably pre-record our show on Christmas Eve, but it'll be playing at the same time. So make sure you listen to that as well. It's been quite the year, Spencer the Wiz, and we're winding down to the end, and still got a long ways to go till we get back to a little bit of normalcy, as the job market has just been crushed here locally, and everything is just so out of whack. And even when we get the vaccine, it's just there's so much damage, collateral damage that has been done. It's going to be probably quite some time before we get back to some normalcy, but it's been fun getting to talk sports with you every Tuesday and Thursday on this show, and try to at least bring our lives to some sort of entertainment and the things that bring us happiness through all this chaos and uncertainty. So we're winding down the end of 2020, and basketball season started up again. It was a good one tonight, Spence. The first game saw 48 combined points by Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, and the Nets looked really good as they blasted the Warriors 126-99. It's only one game, but Kevin Durant sure looked healthy to me. He had some hop in his step. He made some really nice plays at the basket. I thought he shot the ball really well. And look, we've talked on this show, we're not the biggest fans of Kyrie Irving as a locker room guy, and you know, his personality leaves a lot to be desired, but the guy as a basketball talent is supreme. He really propelled Cleveland to their championship season in the finals. And when he's healthy, which isn't very often, if we're going to be honest, but when he is healthy, he can certainly fill up the basket offensively. A nice win for the Nets. And I was a little surprised, Spence. I thought Golden State would have a little bit better effort. The way I saw it, they didn't shoot the ball well at all. I think they'll put on a better performance on Christmas Day against Milwaukee, but Brooklyn was definitely the story in that first game tonight.
Yeah, I have quite a few thoughts about this one. Kevin Durant, I can talk about first. His shot selection wasn't great, but he is a high-volume scorer, so that's just naturally going to happen. You can say the same thing about James Harden, but the pull-ups look just as good as it ever has been, especially that three that he had at the top of the key, the rolling to the side, two defenders like right in his face. He hits that one with just a certain amount of ease that only he can do at his size and length and shooting form. Kyrie Irving was a very aggressive, but really the Nets have the best constructed roster in the NBA. I mean, coming off the bench is some sort of like pseudo bottom east starting lineup in a sense.
Yeah.
Jeff Green, I mean, we know how good of a role player he's been. The Grizzlies, traded a first-round pick for him. They probably should have kept him when they did that. But anyways, I mean, you can go down the list. I mean, I even forgot that Landry Shamet somehow made his way to Brooklyn, and he's a guy who is a very reliable three-point shooter. Didn't have the best game, but I think he's looking to define his role. Really, the number one guy who I kind of keyed in tonight and most curious about was Karis LeVert. He wants to be a starting NBA player, and I think he came out way too hot. At first I thought it was going to be pretty bad. I mean, he ended the point with 20 points, so it sounds weird to kind of, I don't know, criticize a guy for having a 20-point game. I think a lot of those points were empty. I mean, I think on the first possession, he drives to the lane, does a weird spin move, ends up running into the defender, trying to pass the ball to Jared Allen, who, he picked up the offensive foul on that. So I think he's trying to show a little bit too much to Steve Nash right now. Played a little better. I mean, he had a few really good 3-point shots, just the kick out, easy shot. It didn't bother him that the defender was closing out on him. Spencer Dinwiddie did not look particularly great either. So I think a lot of these guys are used to these high-end starting role positions, and now they're kind of playing second fiddle, and they have to learn to use their shots and points. But I don't know. I'm going to have to wait till they play someone a little more demanding. I'm not a big fan of Golden State this year. You know that. So I don't think that was any test. And plus, it's the first game of the season. So I'm not here to make season-end decisions. Those are just some of the things that I saw. I want to see the Nets get challenged defensively. I mean, I think their bench unit defensively is better than their starting lineup. Kevin Durant went a little too aggressive at the boards. I think he's got to be careful with that. He is coming off a really bad injury. So to see him do that was a little worrisome. I just want to see the guy healthy because I love watching him play basketball because he's so good.
Sure. So good.
And, yeah. And for the Warriors, I mean, there's a lot of whispers about Steph Curry already starting about how he can't do it by himself. But Kelly Oubre plays a little erratic. I know he ended up having a technically good game, but I don't think he fits in the Warriors system at all. Eric Pascal didn't look nearly as good as he did in his rookie season. And obviously that's because Steph Curry missed so much time and he was kind of allowed to do whatever he wanted. And now that he's just kind of there, I mean, there were times they left him wide open on the 3-point line and he was not looking to shoot the ball. Kevon Looney, I'm just not a huge fan of either. I mean, you can go down their roster. It's pretty thin like it was last season, which I told you would be a big factor. So we'll see. I want to see them get a big win in the season. So if they play the bad teams, I want to see how they blow teams out because right now I don't really see the game plan. So that's kind of my thoughts from the first game of the NBA season.
Yeah, I'll get into the Warriors a little bit, but I want to still piggyback off what you said with the Nets. Kevin Durant coming off a really big injury, missed the entire season. I got to give the Nets credit. I don't care what I've said about either of these guys. Like Spencer said, these are extreme, top of the line NBA basketball talents. And I don't know if you'll agree with me, Spence, but I think the NBA is as talented now as it's ever been. There's so much talent from top to bottom in the NBA, and people that argue that, I just don't think they watch enough basketball because there's just so many guys that are so good and can do so many things. And Kevin Durant and Kyrie are at the top of that list. Durant, to me, looked like he did not really miss a beat. His jump shot was smooth. He was getting to the basket, dunking, rebounding, like you said. He looked very healthy to me. I would like to see the Nets move the ball more. I think if they can have some good ball movement and be unselfish, the game will come to these guys. They don't have to force scoring the basketball. They're that good. They're so talented, so deep. They could be really, really dangerous if they could learn to be unselfish, let the game come to them, and just – it's going to be a little hard because Kyrie and KD, they have their own style of game where they kind of go one-on-one, but these guys can move without the basketball. And the other guys on the Nets team aren't necessarily selfish enough. I did see LeVert, it felt like to me, press a little bit offensively because I don't know why. It seemed to me like, okay, the guy's not getting as many touches as usual, so he's trying to kind of force the issue a little bit. Statistically, like you said, 20 points, it doesn't look bad, and it's hard to critique a team that just won by 27 points. But I think the Nets definitely have championship aspirations, and if that's the case, they're going to learn from this game. You're not just going to go and think because you won by 27 tonight that the season's wrapped up. Got a lot of work to do. But the thing is, Spence, is these two guys, they're two superstars, were not a part of the bubble. They did not play in this. So I like the mix of having your superstars that are probably hungry to get back on the court and get some victories mixed in with guys that had a lot of playing time in that bubble and played well. And you talk top to bottom with that Nets team, they played, and they're very deep. And I love the mix of Joe Harris in there. The guy can flat shoot the ball. You saw that in the first half with the Nets. They're so talented. There's no reason that they can't represent the Eastern Conference in the finals and even win this thing. They're going to have to stay healthy. I don't foresee that happening with Kyrie. He's never stayed healthy. I don't see what would make him stay healthy this year, but maybe they'll prove me wrong, and we'll see. It's going to be fun to watch either way if the Nets can stay healthy, because you got two of the most talented guys in the entire world, and it's going to be fun to watch in the Eastern Conference, competing against Giannis, who just signed a big extension. The Heat, who just represented the East in the finals, would like to get back to the Eastern Conference Finals. So this basketball season is going to be another really fun one to watch. Hopefully, Spence, without the bubble being in place, some of these guys can act like professionals and try to limit the exposure and outbreaks of COVID. We know it's going to happen, but we just hope it doesn't take away too much of the season. We're only 2 games in, so it's going to be hard to say. But I'm really excited for the season, and hopefully that it can last the entire year. So we'll see how that shapes up. From the Warriors' perspective, this game, I was a little disappointed, but look, it's one game. They desperately miss Draymond Green in the lineup. He is really, at times, he's the glue of that team in the starting lineup. And it's devastating not having Klay Thompson. He is so good, so underrated. I know it's hard to say someone like Klay Thompson is underrated, but he really is. And Steph can't do it on his own. He didn't shoot the ball great tonight. They didn't shoot the ball great tonight. That was part of the reason they lost by so much. I think they'll be better. I think they will find their way into the playoff conversation in the Western Conference. But, we got to expect more from Steve Kerr, from these guys that got playing time last year, the young guys, and Draymond and Steph has got to stay in the lineup. If that doesn't happen, they'll probably be drafting the lottery again. So we're going to have to take that one game at a time. I expect them to bounce back and have a good game on Christmas Day against the Bucks. I thought they would have had a chance tonight, but if you're not shooting the ball well when you're a shooting team, it's not going to happen. So the Nets wear the medal tonight in Game 1. Game 2, Clippers and Lakers, is in progress. I don't know if I have the updated score correct here, but it looks like the Clippers have a lead here in the fourth quarter. Clippers started off very strong, which it doesn't surprise me. We talked a couple weeks ago, Spence, about the Lakers having a possible hangover and how hard it would be not to have a little bit of a championship hangover in such a shortened offseason. It's got to be really difficult. And you got to imagine the Clippers weren't too thrilled to watch the Lakers celebrate and get their rings before the game. And they started off pretty pissed off and like a ball of fire, got out to a first quarter big 20-plus point lead. They let the Lakers get back really quickly before halftime and cut it to single digits. Paul George has played pretty well tonight. It looks here like in the fourth quarter, though, Spence, that the Clippers – now, like I said, I don't know how updated my score is, but it looks like they've got the lead here in the fourth quarter. What do you see on your end?
I see 99-90 with 7:57 left on the clock. But yeah, no, there's a ton of validity to what you said. Watching them get their rings and stuff right in front of their faces, not just like any rival. I mean, the city's rival. I mean, they are opposite of each other. They play in the same arena as of right now. So it's got to hurt. So you're going to play a little extra hard. New additions definitely looking pretty good for the Clippers. I think Nicholas Batum was really under the radar. I'm not sure why the Hornets just ended up not playing him. I think that guy can have a role basically on any team. What team wouldn't want a 3-and-D player? He started out quite hot. Lou Williams is always going to be good. Serge Ibaka, he shot 50% in the playoffs. He looks like he's carrying a little bit of that going into the regular season. But I think the Lakers just, they weren't ready to play today. And to talk about the ring ceremony for a second, once again, LeBron James just outclasses himself. Everyone else had just their normal families come on, congratulate them, and they grab their rings. Of course, LeBron has to promote his social justice because if it's not on TV, according to him, it doesn't happen. So it just bothers me to see him kind of just self-fulfilling prophecy, just like I'm the greatest person ever. I do all this charity when he should really just be doing it with no recognition at all. But yeah, I mean, they came out really flat-footed. I don't think they ever wanted to win tonight. I think they just kind of cruised into the season. They got a lot of new guys. Marcus Gasol obviously is trying to find his way into the offense. I think their offense was really stagnant today. They were looking to get the shot off in the first maybe 5 seconds, which is just honestly not ideal. It's not really what the Lakers are going to go for. They're really a pounded down inside. And I think they lost a bit of shooting over the offseason. I mean, you look at the starting lineup, Dennis Schroeder was okay. He hit a couple of shots, but Kentavious when you add Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Dennis Schroeder, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and Marcus Gasol, you're talking about maybe a 32 to 33% overall 3-point percentage, and that's just not really great when it comes to it. I don't think they should have re-signed Kentavious Caldwell-Pope in the offseason at all, especially for the money that they did. So I think their bench is going to have to really pull a lot, lift a lot of the weight off when it comes to that side, or that side of the offensive game. But yeah, I mean, we were probably right. I think the Lakers probably shoot for around 500 over the first 10 games, and we'll see how they respond after that.
Spence, it's interesting you mentioned the shooting because it's something I thought about, and I was kind of enamored with the offseason moves for a little bit. Loved Schroeder, like Gasol, but when I really thought about it, even when the game, I'm like, when I saw the starting lineup getting rolled out, do I love their shooting ability here? They haven't got much better from shooting the three ball, and that could get them in trouble, Spence. It really can. They're not going to be able to cruise to a title like everybody thinks back to back. It is not easy to do. LeBron's not getting younger, although I'm not doubting him whatsoever. But Anthony Davis, it was tough for him to stay healthy the entire year last year. I don't know that he'll be able to do that. And I think with some of that shooting missing, look, these other teams are going to be good and competitive and going to give the Lakers all they can handle. I'm telling you that for sure. A Portland, a Denver. It's going to be very competitive. I don't think this is going to be a cakewalk for the Lakers to be back in the finals, especially with a motivated Clippers team who's playing pretty decent. Paul George seems to statistically be leading the way for the Clippers tonight. This is only one game, but just forecasting a little bit Lakers down the road, I think you're onto something here with the shooting. They definitely, I don't think, got better from as far as a three-point shooting team. So they're going to really have to do some other things they're not going to coast through this NBA playoffs. It is not going to happen. And LeBron has not fixed his free throw shooting inconsistencies. We were enamored by the ink on the paper and what they look like on paper. I'm not convinced. And I'm not saying that because of this game tonight. Once I actually thought about it and saw it on the floor, I'm like, hey, they're not the best three-point shooting team. They're not necessarily better from top to bottom from three, and that's going to cause them problems. And I do see that causing them problems. So it's not going to do them any favors getting off to a slow start this year. Maybe we're wrong, but it's going to be interesting to monitor these first 10 games of the year. It doesn't get easier on Christmas Day when they take on a Dallas Mavericks team led by future MVP hopeful Luka Doncic.
Yeah, it's just a little awkward. I mean, even coming up, it's not like they have any bad three-point shooters necessarily. They just don't have any specialists. I mean, they lose Danny Green. They replace him with Wesley Matthews. I mean, okay, he is a shooter. Alex Caruso, I guess, can hit a few of them as well. It's just, yeah, when you look at it, when you look at the court, when you see the product on the court, you're like, wait a second. I feel like something's missing here. But, right. I mean, they're going to be hard to match up with in any case. I mean, going down low, I think even though the Clippers are probably going to win tonight's matchup, they still didn't address the problem of who's going to guard Anthony Davis. In fact, I think it got worse. Serge Ibaka was on him for one possession, and he blew right past him and dunked. So, and then even looking forward, I mean, you got Nurkic and you got Jokic. Those are all guys that are going to be eating down below because Zubac has proved it last season. He's not able to guard these guys in the playoffs, and I don't think Ibaka is either.
Like I said, I'm worried Anthony Davis's health. He hasn't shown anything right now, but he's never stayed healthy really an entire season. I mean, he's had moments, but I don't trust that completely until it's shown to me consistently. So it's just going to have to be something to watch because if Anthony Davis misses some playoff time, it's going to be tough for the Lakers, in my opinion. So we'll see how it shapes up. Like I said, the West is not getting worse. They are, if anything, getting better, in my opinion. So we'll see how it shapes up. It's going to be an exciting season, Spence. And most of the games get underway tomorrow. And let's talk about a few of those. Do you want to start it off, Spence, with a game that you'll be kind of watching tomorrow and we'll talk about a little bit?
Yeah, so James Harden plays again against his old team, the OKC Thunder. We know about the playoff kind of rivalry they have going now, but everyone's eyes are going to be on James Harden because we all know about the trade rumors going on, and they've also, plenty of things. I think he threw the ball at somebody in practice. The guy's not locked into playing playoff basketball or, I guess, all-in basketball, franchise basketball for this Rockets team, and I don't know. He doesn't seem like a very professional guy, And I think that really hurts him because who wants to trade for somebody who is childish, who instead of being at training camp is partying with Lil Baby, excuse me, with his mask off and everything like that. It's just, I don't like to see it. And I think if he could just get his act together, this trade's going to happen a lot faster, which is obviously what he wants. But if he goes out there and starts acting sluggish, he's just chucking up balls, not playing team basketball, because the Rockets seem to actually have a pretty decent roster this year. And if they made the right trades, a la Ben Simmons, I mean, I think they would have a better chance of making the playoffs than the Warriors do. But none of that's going to happen if this guy's moping around on the court.
Spence, it looks to me like the front runner's got to be the Sixers. I think Brooklyn is very comfortable with what they have. They don't need a James Harden to do what they want to do this season. I think the Sixers may be at the top of the list for that conversation. And I think the Sixers are going to find out what they feel like after a couple games. It's not going to take a ton of games in this shortened season, Spence, to see what teams are like. But I mean, I do like Embiid and Simmons together. I know some people don't agree with that. They certainly flourished when they had JJ Redick as their shooter. I know that they've added a couple guys I can't think off the top of my head that can shoot a little bit. I like the Doc Rivers coaching addition. We'll have to see how it shapes up. I mean, of course, these guys got to stay healthy. I'd like to see Simmons attempt at least 2 or 3 threes a game just to see. I mean, his stroke has never looked bad. He's just not he's shy when it comes to shooting the basketball. So who do you team James Harden up with in the if he's a part of the Sixers, if you trade him to the Sixers? But you mentioned it, Spence. The guy doesn't seem locked in, dialed in. And for first-year coach Steven Silas and a new GM, do you really want to carry this distraction going on? If he wants out of there, try to get the most value you can for him. He's already pretty much said that he's not going to re-sign or sign an extension. So get the most you can for him as early as you can. I think that's maybe the mindset of Steven Silas and the organization. It sucks because James Harden is one of the greatest scorers in the league. You hate to lose someone like that, especially once you have fans back. But with the new regime, these guys are looking to kind of put their own stamp on the organization moving forward.
Yeah, it's just you can't be too hasty because are the Rockets trying to win a championship this year? No, they're not. So technically there is no rush one way or the other. And you don't want to give James Harden away for nothing. I mean, I don't think they're being offered nothing. I think the teams that have surfaced that have been reaching out to them are the Nuggets, which I think would probably give them the best assets if Ben Simmons is really off the table, like Daryl's saying. What was the other team? I wish I could remember now. Oh, right here. The Celtics, Raptors, and Nuggets are the 3 teams. The Celtics probably need him the most, so I think they'd probably give the most desperate package. But at the same time, I don't really know what they can give up. They're not going to give up Tatum, obviously. They're not going to give up Jaylen Brown. That's also off the table. So once you look past that, I don't know what they have to offer. The Nuggets have Gary Harris. That could be just a valuable asset alone and probably could buy into the new Rockets head coach type of system. I think he's trying to teach a little bit of tough basketball with that team. So it's and then we don't even know. I mean, these are just reports. They could be talking to every team in the league. So I think the real trade contender could just come out of nowhere. We wake up one morning and we see that he got traded to Joe Schmo team in the Eastern Conference, and that's it.
Yeah, Spencer, I think the Rockets, they're not going to just give him away for nothing. They're definitely going to try to get the maximum value they can. I certainly believe that that's going to be the case, but I do see it happening maybe sooner than later. And it's just something we're going to have to follow each and every time. Let's see how the Rockets play in their first game. I think they, like you said, they kick off or tip off tomorrow against OKC, his former team. OKC certainly seems to be in a big rebuild. Billy Donovan's moved on, now the coach of the Bulls, so no Chris Paul for OKC. They've got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, young, talented guy, but no more Steven Adams. So not a very high expectations for Oklahoma City this year. So the Rockets will be a favorite, and we'll see how they play, see how Harden gets the rest of his teammates involved. I think a little bit of quarreling and fighting in practice is not necessarily a bad thing. We'll see how it shapes up on the court. I'm interested to follow that. A couple other games. It's pretty much a full slate tomorrow, Spence. So we're not going to go over every game, but Bucks Celtics is a nice matchup as Giannis has signed his extension. The Celtics under Brad Stevens, Jason Tatum signed an extension. So we'll see. The Celtics, a handful of teams thought had a chance to get to the finals for Eastern Conference last year. They couldn't quite get over the hump. A lot of people are still maybe high on them. They've got some young talented guys, but What do you think the Celtics may be missing, Spence, to get over the hump in the Eastern Conference? Why can't they seem to find themselves in the finals? And they haven't under Brad Stevens.
No, that's a great question. I mean, is there really one addition that you say that they can't? I mean, what else do they possibly need to get them in the finals? Maybe not in the Western Conference, which is, we know how talented it is. I mean, I think they're probably around the same level as the Nuggets, but I can't really say that in reality because the Nuggets would make the finals in the East Coast if they were over there.
Yeah.
There's no reason. I mean, this is a big season for the Celtics. I think it's flying under the radar. Brad Stevens has been there for a while. Everyone seems to love him. But why couldn't Boston have made the finals last year? They shouldn't have lost to that Heat team. They're much more talented. And on the same side, I mean, Mike Budenholzer, they for sure should not have lost to the Heat either. I mean, that was really fluky for both teams to be doing that. I think, honestly, Brad Stevens has a little more pressure than people might think going into the season. They got to make the finals this year. There's no way they shouldn't. I think they're the most talented team in the East. I think they have a pretty complete roster. Defensively, they're sound. You have your guy in Jason Tatum. Now it's going to come down to him because we've seen he has had a bunch of stinkers when it comes to the playoffs, like these 0 for 12 games, these 0 for 14 games. He's not a player who knows how to turn it off. He's going to go all the way all the time. But for the most part, they can't afford for him to do that. If LeBron James had an 0 for 14 game, I mean, I think LA would be on fire. Somehow his flies under the radar. It loses them playoff games. Going into year whatever now, this is probably year 4 or 5 for him. He's got to show something because otherwise they ain't going nowhere. It starts with him and it ends with him.
And Spence, the Celtics always seem to be in the conversation of trade rumors to try to get a little bit better to get over that hump. They like Tatum. You mentioned Brown possibly being off the table. Gordon Hayward's moved on. What pieces get moved around? Kemba Walker seems to be the guy in the conversation at this point. And I mean, is Kemba the weak link there that's not getting the job done? You mentioned Tatum's playoff performances. What do you personally think they're missing? Is it just not clutch enough in those big games to finish them off? Because they have their moments, but they can't seem to finish it off come playoff time.
Well, they put a lot of responsibility on Kemba Walker as he was only bad because he played for Charlotte. Kind of the same mentality that the Lakers had with Anthony Davis. Turns out the Lakers were right, and maybe the Celtics were wrong. Kemba Walker has just not looked very good. He has no playoff experience, so I think that could be part of it. And I don't think they realized how important actually playing playoff games are. I'm not sure how many times he went to the playoffs with Charlotte, maybe once during all that time. Maybe the year they had Al Jefferson when he was still good. And I think that might have been it. And we're talking about a bad Eastern Conference that has not been good for a long time. That 8th seed in the Eastern Conference has had no value for the past decade. And I mean, that's probably why they're in such strong talks with the Rockets. I mean, maybe you have to sell Kemba Walker to the Rockets, and I just don't think that's easy to do. But if a trade's going to happen between the two, I mean, you're going to have to just be a salesman just because of salaries and everything like that. He's going to have to go there. Plus, you don't want 2 point guards that are like all-star caliber players. So I don't know what the Celtics do. That's it. That's the only way they get out of this.
Speaking of teams that are desperate to get to the finals, the Milwaukee Bucks, Spence, they've had the regular season best record, I believe, 2 or 3 years in a row and have not found their way into the finals. They had some bad luck in the bubble with Giannis getting hurt and some other injuries right in the middle of the playoff run that really stunted them moving along. If Giannis can stay healthy the entire year, they've made some changes here and there. What do the Bucks need to do to make that step? And I think the Bucks not only are looking to get to the finals, but they want to win the thing.
Well, yeah, and all of that, just like Tatum, comes down to Giannis Antetokounmpo, who has also just not played well in the playoffs. This is what happens. Everyone in the regular season doesn't play as hard. They let him kind of do his dunking thing, his easy layups, the transition. Those don't happen in the playoffs nearly as often. You got to earn a lot of buckets, and that means he's going to have to put his back to the basket, get some fadeaways. He's going to have to shoot more consistent for the perimeter. And every single year, I do not believe in the Bucks. Guy said, okay, Giannis, just show that to me, and I'll shut up forever, and you guys can go to the finals. But every single season, they cut off the lane from him. They force him to his left, tell him to shoot some mid-range shots, some three-point shots, and he just hasn't been able to do it. Look, I don't think this is the worst team in the world. I mean, they traded for Drew Holiday. I think they gave up too much. Although I guess in the end they won because they got the extension from Giannis, and they even put in a trade kicker there. So he's probably not going anywhere no matter what happens. Hopefully the sellout that they had produces something. Again, this is another team that has no reason not to make the finals every single year in the East. This is a team that would probably be around the 4 seed in the West, and that should for sure get you down all the way. Once again, the Heat were not that talented. The Bucks were a more talented team. Starts and ends with Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Spence, I got to take a quick detour here as Tequila Bravo jumps in. He's ready to talk some Steelers football, and he thinks they still look good, even though they lost to a third-string quarterback and a 2-win Bengals team. And he's ready to line up his week of hosting if they make the Super Bowl. Yes, Bravo, you will host a show for a week, wherever you like, if you want to do it on top of Madison Square Garden with Tequila 1800 hanging from your wrist. But the Steelers are what I've thought they were, at least it looks like here the last 3 or 4 weeks. And we'll get into football here in just a couple minutes, Bravo. So stick around and we'll see if your Steelers can find their way back in the win column. It doesn't get easier for them, and they don't look like they're getting better. They may be getting worse. So they're certainly ravaged by injury. But Spence, we'll finish up our basketball talk. One more game to kind of look forward to tomorrow, a good one. The Phoenix Suns and the Dallas Mavericks. Luka Doncic, of course, to me, he was the man of the bubble, playoff time, and towards the end there, it looks like he's the next big star in the NBA possibly. I'm a big Devin Booker fan. I know you feel a little different. No Kristaps Porzingis in the beginning of the year for Dallas I think is tough because I think that combination of Doncic and Porzingis is really tough. So we'll see how – but Luka can do it without Porzingis. Luka can take over games. He makes everybody better. He's just really fun to watch. So this will be an exciting game. It'll be the late game tomorrow, and it'll be a good one on ESPN.
Yeah, totally agreed. But the Mavericks just have one big issue, and that's just they don't have a complete roster. I'm going to go down here and just say a few names just to highlight that Dorian Finney-Smith, Dwight Powell, and James Johnson are their forwards for the team. That's all I need to know about them in terms of just projecting this entire season. They very well may make the playoffs when you have a guy like Luka Doncic, but even when it go down their guards, you have Luka, but then you look next, you got Josh Richardson. Okay, I mean, that's fine. Tim Hardaway, that's decent enough. Jalen Brunson, I mean, he's a decent rookie from Villanova. Not rookie, I think this is his second year now. Trey Burke. And then you have guys like Maxi Kleber, Willie Cauley-Stein. These are just not names that you want to call upon for big playoff games. So, I mean, if the Phoenix Suns don't finish above the Mavericks this season, I'm sorry. It's Devin Booker's fault. I think it comes down to that for sure because he hasn't won over 24 games in his entire career until last season when they stole a bunch for that little play-in tournament. Now they have Chris Paul. There's no more excuses for them not to be a 40-win team. I'll just believe it when I see it.
Well, from Phoenix's perspective, or at least what I saw just in some brief preseason action, Chris Paul is not the pass-first guy that Ricky Rubio is, and I would personally like to see Devin Booker shooting the ball more than Chris Paul, even though Chris Paul can score the basketball a little bit. I think Devin Booker is the guy that's got to take the highest volume of shots on that team. We'll see how they mix in together. From the Mavericks perspective, I think Luka can do it all. Unfortunately for him, he battled some injuries down the stretch, missed some time, so that worries me a little bit. And the way he plays, it's easy for him to get tangled up and get that ankle rolled on. So I'm hoping he stays healthy because I really do think he's going to be the next big star in the league. He's so talented and he's so exciting to watch. So I think that's going to be a really good game tomorrow. And I would love to see the Mavericks full strength with Porzingis and with Doncic, but I think Porzingis may miss a little bit of time here. We'll have to investigate that a little more, Spence, if it's a month or 2 months. But I know he's going to miss a decent amount of time, but hopefully he'll be back in the lineup. And if he is, I think Dallas can make some noise. So that'll be a good one tomorrow. Spence, we'll get into some NFL talk now when we'll review our Week 15 picks. I'm not going to go in order here because I want to start off with the two biggest underdog games of the week. And let's start off with Monday Night Football's crazy matchup in Bravo's Steelers. He's excited to get on the Steelers train, but that train has got off the tracks very quickly, as I predicted for weeks, many weeks. They've now lost 3 straight, And this one is got to be the worst of all. As I did say that they had a chance to lose to Cincinnati, but I thought it would be with Joe Burrow under quarterback. They did lose to Cincinnati, but it was with Ryan Finley under center. They got behind 17-0, and they could not overcome that deficit. And Cincinnati gets the outright win as almost 2 touchdown, or it was 2 touchdown or more as it closed. And the Steelers, Spence, they're now in trouble of losing the division. And did anybody else call it as much as I did? I called it when they were 11-0 that they might not win the division. And now it looks like it's a very much a possibility, as the Browns have to just beat the Jets and the Colts have to beat the Steelers. And then it's a Browns-Steelers showdown for the AFC North in Week 17.
Yeah, I mean, it's falling apart pretty quickly here. They haven't had a run game for weeks as well. I think they're missing James Conner, but still they have under 50 rushing yards for 3 straight games going into it. I don't know if they got over that benchmark exactly on Monday night, but still, I mean, there are tons of spots where they just couldn't move the ball. And to lose to Ryan Finley, it kind of feels like Ryan Mallett a few years ago when they lost to him after they picked him off the street and Baltimore beat them. So part of this is you can chalk it down to a division game, and we know how weird stuff like that happens, like the Raiders beating the Chiefs earlier this season. And there's probably a few other examples, you just never know from week to week. Plus, they have the TikToks where they're dancing on the Bengals logo. It's just going to fire you up because you see them 2 times a year, and it just sucks to lose twice in a year to your divisional opponent. But then you can go back and look at the Redskins game. Well, I guess they do have the best secondary in the league, but they blew that game. I mean, they had their early 14-point lead. Now, looking top to bottom, they have a ton of injuries on the roster right now defensively, so that's going to be part of it. But we talked about it before the show. The real point of contention that you should worry about is Ben Roethlisberger. If you're a Steelers fan, he looks, I mean, I don't know if it's injuries or what, but his body is brittle. He's making some very poor decisions. Even that last throw of the game on 4th down, I mean, he was way, way off. And it's not like the Bengals have world beaters when it comes to pass rushers. I think they've gotten rid of some. They've lost other guys to injury. They got to figure it out, and it's going to start with Ben Roethlisberger. He had the great throw to Deontay Johnson, but that's not great after you just come off of 3 turnovers, and he has had some really bad interceptions. They can get all the defensive guys back they want, but if he continues to play that way, they're not going to make it out of the second round of the playoffs.
Well, Spence, look, Ben had to leave a game 3 weeks ago with an injury right before halftime. I think it was against the Cowboys. And we don't know that he's all of a sudden better from that. I mean, he's really banged up right now. I didn't think he was that great even when he wasn't banged up as far as at this point in his career. Look, I'm not saying the Steelers are the worst team ever. I just don't think they're good enough to beat anybody that's going to be in the playoffs in the AFC. I just really don't. They had a favorable schedule that helped them start off. They had some nice wins. But it's falling apart now. And look, things don't always go your way in a football season. So injuries are hitting them at a bad time. Ben's not playing his best football at the best time. But if you are a Steelers fan, you at least got to you do have some weapons at the receiver position. And you're going to have to lean on those guys to make key plays and to really pick up the slack, because some of these defenses, Spence, has caught on to Pittsburgh, what they want to do offensively. They want to get the ball out of Roethlisberger's hands quickly. These defenses keyed in on that, and they're going to have to mix it up a little bit. And it's going to be tough to do without a running game, but they're going to have to find a way, and they're going to have to continue to run some of these jet sweeps, manufacture some rushing yards in other ways, because these defenses are picking up that Ben wants to get the ball out of his hands quickly. They're playing up. The Bengals had great coverage on those, and they made some big-time plays early in that game, and they did enough to hang on. And even when Pittsburgh had the ball in their possession to drive down the field to tie the game, the Bengals defense locked up and covered up those guys. And Ben could not get the ball out of his hands quickly and make the plays that they're used to. And it seemed like Cincinnati had a good game plan. So Pittsburgh's they're in a lot of trouble. I don't foresee a team that they can really beat. One team I would say they could beat is the Dolphins, because the Dolphins are banged up with injury, but the Dolphins are the best team against the spread out of anybody this entire year. I think they're 11-3, and I think they're very well coached. I know Mike Tomlin shouldn't get tons of heat, but I'm pretty willing to say I'd rather have Brian Flores coaching my playoff team than Mike Tomlin. And Mike Tomlin's won a Super Bowl. I know that's a big statement, but that's what I believe. I just don't think the Steelers were ever and have been very good the last few years. And I don't think it's going to happen for them this year. And look, Spence, there's nobody that talked about it more than me for 10 weeks. I'd be hard pressed to say it. And it's starting to come true now. Could the Steelers go on a little bit of a run? It's possible. I just don't see it happening. Like I said, they're in jeopardy now of losing the division. They won't even be hosting a playoff game if they don't win this week against the Colts, possibly. Because, look, the Browns are playing winning football right now. I'm not in love with the Browns either, but they're playing good ball right now. They're winning games, and they're doing what they have to do. We know they have a good running attack. I don't know that they can stop anybody defensively, but I just don't. I don't think Pittsburgh is in a position to beat anybody right now. They can't even beat Cincinnati. So with that being said, they've got to figure it out really quick, because there's only 2 regular season games left, and there's only one team that's going to get a bye in the playoffs, and it looks like that's going to be the Chiefs. So the Steelers are going to have to play right away. They're not going to get. They'd like to get healthier, but it's no guarantee that they get all these guys back right away. So they've got to figure something out. Spence, the other huge upset this past weekend, the Jets. Of course, this one crushed me, as I was very excited to talk about my Jets watch, as they were on track to go 0-16, and I was going to cash a ticket. The biggest underdog of the entire season. They pretty much led from start to finish, and we've talked about the inconsistency of the Los Angeles Rams, and this is as bad a loss as it gets for the Rams. I mean, how they figured out a way to get down so much to the Jets is beyond me. And how can you trust this team to win any games in the playoff when they can't beat a Jets team that's won 0 games all year? Not only that, in their own home stadium.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just so crazy to me that like they go into the game knowing that they have Trevor Lawrence, which is kind of their, I don't know, like swan song, just like, this is going to be the future of our franchise. We'll probably get a lot of value out of Sam Darnold, who looks like for sure he is a, he's an NFL quarterback. And we talked about how he might be pretty good on the Steelers. I still think that's a real possibility. And then you look at the Rams. I mean, I think 2 weeks ago we were talking about how serious we should be, or I was. Sure. You weren't nearly as much on them as I was, but I was saying how seriously they should be taken in the playoffs. I mean, they were in the Super Bowl not that long ago. And, oh gosh, I don't know. How should you really feel about the Rams? I'm not ready to go full overboard. Weird games happen all the time. The Jets are super desperate. We talk about tanking, but these players are all fighting for their jobs. A lot of them, are probably fringe NFL guys at this point, and it's going to be hard to scout them and put them on different teams when they play this bad, because how can you shine on a defense and an offense that has looked so horrible this whole season?
I know Chris Wynn has the Rams as his dark horse. Well, they're so dark you can't see them, because, look, I was trying to give the Rams credit when they would have their inconsistencies, but I'm telling you right now, when you lose a game to a team that has not won as a 17-point favorite, that's not going to leave you. You're not going to go into the playoffs. And look, a lot of it's Jared Goff. Jared Goff is not – he's not good. He's taken the regression like Carson Wentz a little bit. He can't move in the pocket. He's got plenty of talent from the receiver position. He's got a good play caller. The Rams are gone in the first round of the playoffs. There's no way Goff is going to have the confidence, and they're going to – if they can't beat the Jets in their home field as 18-point favorites, they're not going to beat an NFC playoff team, and it's not going to be like the Cardinals. They're going to have to play a team they're probably going to have to play a team that's won their division. And even if it's an NFC East team, I think the Washington football team will beat them. The Washington football team's look, their defense is solid. They will be over on Jared Goff all day. It'll be a very low-scoring game, and I think the Rams will be in trouble. The Rams, man, you can't lose to the Jets. I'm sorry. You're an 18-point favorite. It's unheard of, and they didn't just get beat. They got dominated for the most part, and they had their opportunities. I mean, the refs weren't very good down the stretch. They were awful, but, man, this is just this is a terrible loss for the Rams, and it's going to stick with them. I mean, how do you – if you're the Rams, how do you have confidence in a close game in the playoffs when you've lost – to the Jets and you can't overtake that comeback? It's just, you just got to get in their psyche a little bit. They've got some talent, but they're just so inconsistent. We've seen it year in and year out. They play close in division games, and then they'll lose or play close to the Giants and the Jets. Just awful. Spence, let's start from the beginning of the picks, and we'll run down some of the recaps of these games. The Panthers barely got the cover. This was a Saturday game. They were down fairly early to the Green Bay Packers. They came back late. They had a possession to go down the field late in the game, but they couldn't get the job done. And the Packers put themselves in prime position to have the 1 seed in the NFC. So they're going to come off of a little bit of a rest after having that early game. And the Panthers were competitive early in the season, but they've battled some injuries, and it's just not been good for them over the past month for Carolina.
Yeah, that hook, we talked about it on Tuesday, we talked about it on Thursday's show, and it just came true. It's so hard to cover 8.5 against a team that's as competitive as they are, and they're going to fight to the very end, and that just helps you get that extra field goal, that extra touchdown. Garbage time is a bit of a blessing, and that's what came up here. But to talk about the Packers, I mean, as strange as they've looked in certain spots, especially that Jaguars game, they might be the most consistent NFC team, because even this week we saw a Seattle team just not look great against a Dwayne Haskins-led Washington football team, and the Packers look like they're playing good football, like really at the end of the season, which is what you want to see going into the playoffs. I like the Packers. They're probably my favorites to be in the Super Bowl as of right now, although I still think it's going to be Seattle, and I just don't know why.
Well, Russell Wilson, man, he's the X factor. Spence, this next game got me. I should have took your advice, Spence. You were all over the Bills and on a teaser, and I've liked the Bills so much. I don't know why I got sucked in, but I'll never get sucked into the Broncos again. They're up there with the Jets and these other teams as one of the worst teams in the league. I mean, I don't even know how they've gotten these wins, because you want to talk about trash quarterbacks. Drew Lock is terrible. He will never if he starts a game for the Broncos again next year, everybody should be fired. Elway, Fangio, all of them. Drew Lock is awful. The Broncos were disgusting on Saturday. I mean, they got their ass kicked up and down the field. Their offense is terrible. And you have a bunch of jackasses that can't even get your quarterbacks to suit up for a full game in the middle of the season. Why would I ever trust a damn Broncos team that can't even get a quarterback on the field 4 weeks ago? Clearly they're undisciplined. They're a bunch of clowns. You don't know what you're going to get from week to week. I say it every week. Do we not talk every week how inconsistent the Broncos are? They're just somebody you can never trust. So here's my advice. Never fucking bet a Broncos game. They're that terrible. And it's just disgusting, because I had a lot of good tickets and I teased the Broncos really high on a super teaser. It did not matter. The Bills sliced through them like Swiss cheese. And the Bills, look, we've talked about it. They may be representing the AFC in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, they have a legitimate shot. I don't know if they will. It's just a lot of a leap to ask from going from the first round to the Super Bowl. It's certainly possible. But yeah, I said the Broncos played well last week, so what are they going to do in turn? They're going to be horrible this week.
Right.
And that's what they were. It's just it's almost like a clock, although really with that logic, they should be 8-8. But they played a few good teams this year that you just knew they weren't going to beat no matter what. The Bills, once again, man, off that bye week, they are hot. So they are getting momentum at the perfect time. Not that they've been even bad this season at all, but now they're playing their best football, which is really cool to see. I'm rooting for the Bills. I mean, we know that they've lost 3 Super Bowls in a row or whatever, so it probably hurts to be a Bills fan. It's got to be great to watch them right now, seeing what they're doing on the field.
No doubt, and they'll be for sure at least hosting a playoff game. I know there won't be fans there, which is unfortunate, but Bills Mafia will be very excited about that. Yeah, Chris Wynn's on to something. Denver definitely needs to find a quarterback because Drew Lock's not it. Next game, the Colts divisional matchup against the Texans, and this hook got us here, Spence. But the Colts get another win, and I think if the Colts were a little more healthy, they may be a little more dangerous. Look, Gomez is a Colts fan. He's chiming in here. I was not personally high on the Colts early in the year because of Phillip Rivers. I thought Phillip Rivers was the weakest link. But look, me and Spencer have talked about this Colts offensive line for weeks, and they are the heart and soul of that team. Phillip Rivers is one of the least sacked quarterbacks in the league, which is a miracle because he can't move. But that goes to show you the credit that offensive line deserves. Matt Eberflus, the offensive coordinator, head coach Frank Reich, they are doing a fantastic job, and they're able to run the football. You've got Costanzo, you've got Quentin Nelson, the all-pro guard. They've got some solid guys on that offensive line. They're keeping Rivers healthy, and Rivers doesn't have to do too much. So when you can mix up that run and pass, and if you get Darius Leonard to stay healthy on defense. Look, the Colts are continuing to win games. I think they split the series against Tennessee this year, so it's going to be. I'm sure they want. Of course, they want to win that division and host a playoff game, but it seems like it's going to come down to the end with the Colts and Tennessee to win that division. But look, the offensive line is the heartbeat of that Colts team. And as long as you have an offensive line like that, you have a chance to win. I think the Colts, what they want to do, of course, is they want to control the clock and the time of possession. They want to try to wear teams down with that offensive line and that running game. And if they can mix it up with Taylor and Himes and their other running backs, and then mix in that play action and utilize those tight ends, they want to control the clock because they want to pound defenses with that offensive line. Chris, I don't know that the Colts defense is top notch. They are good when they're healthy. They're certainly better than the Browns and some of these other defenses. But if they want to slow down a Chiefs, a Ravens, Buffalo, I think they want to control the clock. They really want to dominate the line of scrimmage, which every team wants to do. But the Colts can do that because their offensive line's that good. So look, they probably should pound a Houston team that doesn't have a lot to play for. But those division games are always close. They found a way to win. They did pound the Raiders a week before that. So they've got to keep winning games. That's what the Colts need to do. That's what they want to do. And even though Phillip Rivers isn't, you don't feel the greatest about him leading you into the playoffs, you got to like his veteran leadership. He's certainly tough. He's certainly fiery. He will have a team focused, and I think he is a guy that will help elevate the play of his teammates. But it's that offensive line, man. If you can limit the turnovers and you can control the line of scrimmage, the Colts can play with anybody. Spence?
Yeah, well, I've been a big fan of the Colts, for the entire season. I bet on them very early. Hurt my feelings a little bit when they lost to the Jaguars week 1. Still, It's a divisional game. It's week 1. Lots of weird stuff happens. Really betting the first week of football is one of the hardest things to do. But they went out to a really early lead against Houston, and it's a divisional opponent. They know them very well. They're going to score a few points. Anytime you have Deshaun Watson as your quarterback, you're going to just have a chance to be in any given game. So the hook did kill us here, but looking forward, the Colts were my pick to win that division. But the Titans, man, Mike Vrabel is such a consistent coach, and they've had a few ugly games, and we'll talk about them in just a second. But he's able to just keep them on track, and the Colts are just right there behind him, though. They flip-flop their games in the regular season. I would love to see them somehow play each other in the playoffs. I think that would be one of the most interesting playoff matchups, in football going into it, because I don't know. I don't see a lot of close games in the first few rounds of the playoffs. The Chiefs, I just feel like can just blow out anybody who's in a wild card spot now. But I like this Colts team. I think Phillip Rivers is just an okay quarterback, and Jacoby Brissett was not one. I think they could have been in the exact same spot last year, but this year they got a guy who's just okay. They'll look to replace him as soon as they can, but for now they're going to roll with him, and they'll be okay with that for the time being.
Well, Spence, you want to talk about a team, and you mentioned them, that knows their identity, knows what they want to do. That's the Tennessee Titans. They blasted the Detroit Lions. It was close early, but this is a team that knows what they want to do, and I think they're built for playoff football. They showed it last year as they made a deep run, and they had a lead on the Chiefs in the AFC title game in the first half. This is a team that wants to run the ball and run the ball even more, and then they want to utilize Tannehill and play action. And they've got some talent on the outside with A.J. Brown and the tight ends and receivers. But look, this is a team that's well coached, and they know what they're going to do. They are going to pound you running the football. Derrick Henry is going to be a load to bring down, and come playoff time, they want to be the more physical team. Their defense can play well at times, but they're going to run the ball, and they're going to use Tannehill in the play action. And you want to talk about a team that's getting hot at the right time. The Titans are starting to pull away in some of these games, and the Titans are going to be a handful come playoff time. Like I said, it's neck and neck with Tennessee and Indianapolis for this division. But Tennessee, they proved last year come playoff time what they're capable of doing, Spence.
No, I mean, eventually we're going to have to start having a discussion about Derrick Henry just in terms of the mountain of all-time great running backs. How many 150-yard, 2-touchdown weeks is going to have before we start saying that this guy can run with any of them? But Ryan Tannehill as well, 3 touchdowns passing, 2 rushing. This guy is willing to do anything. They're probably the hungriest team looking to play the Chiefs come playoff time. And I don't think that's a matchup the Chiefs want, because if they're able to control the clock keep that Chiefs defense on the field that's just not as good as it was last year, quite frankly, and overall not impressive to watch from week to week, they have a much better chance this season. I think there's a little bit of timidness to their game in the playoffs last year, but now they have the full confidence that they think they can win the Super Bowl. And when you have that kind of mentality, they are just one of the toughest teams. And plus they have a decent enough defense. It's not the greatest, but I think they could stay in with just about any team. I don't think there's any explosive offenses in the AFC outside of the Chiefs. Because I'm looking at, I mean, you got like the Steelers, the Ravens maybe, but I think they can be stopped for sure. And we know the Titans can beat them, obviously. And you start going down that list, and you start putting them next to next with those teams, it gets a little difficult to pick away from them.
Well, the Chiefs have proven over the last 8-9 games that they can't pull away from anybody. So they can be as much of a wild card as anyone. And I know everybody's in love with Mahomes and they're coming off the Super Bowl title, but just too many inexcusable games that they should be blowing teams out, and they can't finish the deal. So it's not gonna get easier come playoff time. Spence, let's go down the next list of games, and we'll go kind of quickly on those. We talked about the Jets. Tampa Bay, Tom Brady, they were down pretty big in this game and found a way to come back. That's kind of been a staple of the Tampa Bay, or not the Tampa Bay Bucks, but Tom Brady more consistently. But the Atlanta Falcons, they've collapsed. Big leads, time in and time out. This is nothing new for them. You got to be embarrassed if you're the Atlanta Falcons, if you're a fan of theirs. Just another huge blown lead. They should have won that game. We didn't get the cover here, but Tampa Bay finding ways to win, and they're going to look to do that come playoff time as well. The next one, I was definitely on the wrong side, and Spence as well. But the Dolphins, they keep winning games and keep covering. And the Patriots season, of course, is over now. We'll see what they do come this offseason. But the Dolphins, they've covered more games than anybody against the spread. They seem to be an extremely well-coached team. Brian Flores is certainly in that conversation for Coach of the Year. And the Dolphins have a very, very high probability of being in the playoffs this year. The Seattle
Seahawks, they're going to go out the Raiders next week.
Yeah, that game will be here at Allegiant Stadium here in Las Vegas. Dolphins and Raiders. Spence, the Seahawks, we talked about them taking on the Washington football team. Not super impressive. Dwayne Haskins got the start. They probably should have blow out Washington in that match. But Washington's defense is going to keep them in most games. They're that talented. But news has come down here in the last 24 hours. Dwayne Haskins, after the game on Sunday, made his way to the strip club and was caught without a mask. Man, if his future wasn't any more dark, it's got to be a lot darker now after this just really not a smart decision by a young guy, and was already not in the good graces of head coach Ron Rivera, and now putting your team at risk even more. Not good news for the Dwayne Haskins camp.
No, certainly not. It's unbelievable how a guy doesn't even have a great performance. He has 2 interceptions. He throws 55 times. I think he only has 230 passing yards. It's inexcusable. This guy doesn't really care about football. He cares probably more about the fame. That's what we all thought going into the game. It seemed to prove it on the field. And then you project that to after the game, and it just looks worse. What are you going to do?
Spence, let's go to the next round of games there. The Chicago Bears, they got the win. I called the upset win. Trubisky getting it going for the Bears. They're now trying to position themselves for the playoffs. Give your thoughts real quick on the Bears. Nice win. They ran the ball at will against the Vikings, and Trubisky gets another win. Let's
see him beat a playoff team. Trubisky still stinks. I don't care what you say.
All right. Well, you know that I'm on the opposite side. I'm still a Trubisky backer. How we ended up with the Jags here, but the Jags now are in prime position to draft Trevor Lawrence after the Jets gave that away. They got destroyed in their matchup, and they for sure will not win another game this year. Spence, you were on the Browns. I'm not much of backing the Browns, but they've shown this year that they're going to be competitive. And of course, we got to give Baker credit, give the running game credit to get the win and the cover. It wasn't super impressive, but they got the job done.
No, for sure. Baker's he found his role. I think he tried doing too much in the beginning of his career. And I've talked about how the Giants are kind of declining. And when you have Jones, who I know I cut out for a second there, but when you have Jones, he's coming off injury. It's just really bad timing for the Giants. It just kind of worked out that way for me.
Spence, I'm not sure, but I think we may have covered this Philly game. I thought it ended, they lost by 6. I could be wrong. We'll have to double check that. Jalen Hurts, not a bad performance, but a really important win for Arizona as they're trying to position themselves for the playoffs. The Eagles are still in the conversation with 2 games left, as Hurts looks like the guy that'll be taking over for the future. Let's go to the next round here, Spence, that we have. The Chiefs, we talked about them. They cannot cover a game. So I don't know what to make of that. And then the Cowboys, you were on the right side there. I thought the coaching matchup would be too much, but San Francisco just not enough offensively. And Dallas, look, everybody's fighting for that division now. So it's I wouldn't say it's anybody's division, but everybody's got a chance with 2 games left. So the NFC East starting to play better. But that'll wrap it up for our Tuesday show. Look, me and Spencer the Wiz will be back same time, same channel on Christmas Eve. It'll be a pre-recorded show, but we'll give you our picks for Christmas Day and then, of course, in Week 16. So we'll be following the NBA on Christmas Day as well. I hope everybody enjoys their holiday. We'll be back on Christmas Eve. If you missed that part of the show, Google, iTunes, Audio Boom, any of your podcasting platforms, search Landry Football Conference Call. The rest stop will be underneath there. For Spencer the Wiz, I'm Brad the Believer. We'll be back on Thursday, 9 o'clock. The rest stop. Have a great night, everyone.